Here we go. The grilling is commencing. The grilling is commencing. Number 3 of Sam Portland Gets Grilled. So this one is going to be really, really interesting. I'm looking forward to this one, actually. If you've been listening with us since the rebirth and everything that we're doing, you probably are getting to understand that this is a lot more than just a typical strength and conditioning podcast. It's a more of a holistic way. And the holistic way has driven and created so many more results for me with my athletes than just out the box coaching with all the books behind you. There's only one book on that shelf which actually is holistically written. And I'm sure you all know which book I'm talking about. So Westy, over to you.
Right. It's something you touched on in your rebirth podcast about your brother's death and what that did, and that kind of hit quite hard to me because it's a very similar thing, a very similar experience happened to me. I just want to know or ask how, if did that change your view on life and coaching, and in what ways that impacted you?
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful question. And I think these are conversations that we steer clear of. Luckily, since 2015, when we lost Jack, I've had thousands of hours of therapy and self-discovery and self-destruction. And I actually got brainwashed by a rogue therapist. So the first therapist, before I get on to the actual nitty-gritty, the first therapist I saw, I picked her because she was close to my house. And the reason why I got into therapy is that I just lost my brother who's 13 months older than me. And we were like what you would call Irish twins. And we did pretty much, growing up, we did everything together, and we're always Jack and Sam. And that was the thing. That's how people talked about us. But so I ended up getting into therapy by calling the child bereavement line. I was just like stuck. I didn't know what to do. If anyone's ever experienced the death of a grandparent or a sibling death, or a parental death, sibling death is not something I would wish on anyone. It really puts a hole in your heart. And I would just be crying all the time, just out of nowhere, not really knowing what to do. And so I called the child bereavement line, and I spoke to this lady. And obviously, the people that work on those lines have suffered a child bereavement. That's how you get on those things. And she was like, "Well, we can't help you." And I was like, "What do you mean you can't fucking help me?" This woman, she was really nice. Can't remember her name. And she was like, "Because you're not young enough to get our help." And I was like, "But I'm still a sibling, and I'm still someone's child." And when I really thought about it, it was like the 8th month. So I never crawled. So I just mimicked my brother. I got up at 8 months and walked because my brother was already walking. So I just did that. I pulled myself up and started walking. And so I followed that. That's how my life was, and that's how intertwined he was into me. And so then I ended up seeing a therapist, and so it turns out afterwards, I was fucking exhausted after all these sessions, and it turns out that she had a major practice, and I did the standard thing. I picked the one that was closest to my house, the one that I could afford, because I had to walk she was literally the road behind my parents' house. Make it as least friction as possible and as affordable as possible. And she was trying to reinvent a new practice to work with narcissism and schizophrenia. Right? And she brainwashed me. She brainwashed me bad. And it took you get a moment where you become incredibly self-destructive, and she just planted this seed into me. And it was and I can now, knowing everything, she split me in half. She turned me into the Joker, like Jekyll and Hyde. She made me split. And obviously, that was her major. She wanted to understand that. And I think she wanted to understand if she could create that in people, which she was very good at it. My life started falling apart, 3 to 6 months later. Just lots of shit, self-destructive behavior started happening. And so what I think the context around how I lost my brother is that, he battled with addiction for a long time after being England trials, you know, academic, grade A, could do everything, anything, everything, proper gifted individual, which led to a lack of stimulation. And so to try and find the next thing and next thing. And so that was like I can imagine that was quite challenging for him. And yeah, so he lost his battle with addiction, but he was in a care section centered with the NHS. And what happened was he was only meant to be allowed out one. He was on a supervised release to start off with. He'd go to the gym, and he would go, and he was clean. He built himself back up. He was in and out of the gym, and then he got himself back up to like 13 stone. Because after having spent, we didn't know, he slept on the streets for 2 years. He was homeless. And which led me to being working with a homelessness charity and going to Everest Base Camp, and so that's the pride of an individual that people, and this can touch anyone, and I think it's so important to talk about this stuff, and so thank you for listening if you are here with me. So what happened is the day that happened, because I think it's really important to have context around it. He got let out on supervised release. And then came back, and then they let him out again. Then came back, they let him out again. He was only meant to be allowed out once, and they let him out 3 times that day before 2:30 in the afternoon. When they realised he was missing, my parents weren't notified till 10 o'clock at night, when they should have been notified immediately, because they could have reached out to him and whatever. And they ended up lying. There was a massive inquest, and what had happened is he ended up relapsing, which is what happens to so many people who end up getting clean. The addiction doesn't leave you for a long time, if not ever. It's about how you manage it. And he just relapsed and died. And it was the 27th of December. I was staying at my girlfriend's, the girlfriend I had at the time, and my phone rang, and I never turned my phone off. And my phone rang, and as soon as it rang, it was my dad. I knew this bolt just hit me, because I had a premonition that day. There's a picture of me and my brother running on the beach on a race, and my foot was on the ground. You may have seen the photo. My foot was on the ground behind the line, as his foot was over the line on the other side. And it's symbolic of our relationship. And I saw that. It was in the bathroom, and like a bolt that afternoon just banged straight through my heart. And I was like, fuck, something's wrong. And I ignored it, and then I knew that night. So it was a really tragic circumstance, and there's a public inquest that lasted like 8 months or something, and it was horrendous. Like, my parents saved us, but from the what you call it, but it was going to be in the news, national news. And so, well, what happened, how that changed my perspective, and what that taught me straight away is that leaving WASPs was the best thing that I could have done, because it was the right thing I could have done. And what I really needed to understand more of was why I was doing things, and what like in such a wounded state, what mattered to me the most, and then how do I actually rebuild myself as an identity in myself. And that opened up so many problems, pitfalls, bad times, hard times, great times, different experiences that I never thought I would I'd ever have the chance to experience. So, my mum always says, so many people are on their first life, and it's a really humbling experience. And so what that did is it actually created a rebirth in me. And I'm big into, I believe, Buddhism, Taoism, like early philosophy, lots of spirituality. Like, I believe in that. I've been to fucking Everest. And if you don't believe in spirits, then you got to get up in those mountains, because they're a special place. And I took some of his ashes up there and had that. And what it started on this journey was asking better questions about how I wanted to create a life for myself, and what legacy do I want to leave behind by building a legacy. And that's what's so important. And so that massive, the hardest experience of my life opened up a whole new way of life, a whole new way of thinking. Because I always say, like, I was working in the Premiership, then I lost my brother 3 months later. Then in that summer, I signed a contract. Well, I went to Everest in March, and then that summer I signed a contract to work in the championship. And I said, shit's got to fucking change. Because how do you do this? And I'm still at rock bottom there, you know? And like, I was like, this doesn't matter. Something else has to matter. It just doesn't matter, like all the little bits and bobs. And you could say, oh, everything, I just changed my life then. No, it's taken me nearly 10 years to get into a position where I feel content, and that's not being a victim. That's understanding the journey. Like, I could tell you 2 years later, I felt better about it, but I didn't. I wanted to go deeper. And when I met my next therapist and I spoke to her about some of the things that had happened, and in that sort of first 3 to 5 year period, there were 4 other people that I knew. 2 died from drug overdoses and 1 killed themselves. And so it was like a perfect storm. There was a lot going on in my life at that time. So then the challenge with her was, I was like, I don't want to feel better. I want to get better. I want to mend myself. I want to heal these wounds, and we have to keep them open as long as we do, because we have to go deeper and we have to understand, because I need this. I need to sort of re-emerge from it and realize, like, the opportunities that I can have, and that's what created, a new life for me. And that's how that's why I love Taoism, because it's the yin and the yang. On one side you have the polar opposite, and in death you create life, and I created a new life for myself. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, it's good. It's very good. It's like, is the catalyst for going a different path, for taking a different path, and seeing that there is more to it than the road we go down. I think it's, we can become quite blinkered down one path, and not saying that you have to have a big life-changing event like that to make that change, but it does open your eyes to, and like I said, there's not quite as tragic event, but a similar event is what made me stand up and realize that things had to change as well. So that's why it kind of touched me when you speak about that. It touched me because I feel a very similar path, very similar change came.
Yeah, and that's I have to thank you for asking that question. I thank for entertaining and in putting yourself in that question. I think that's really important, and that's why I don't mind talking about it. Because it's such an important thing that people need to understand, because I've done the work. I've gone deep into the whole, you saw me on Legacy. I fucking cried when I told you I was good enough to write a book. I thought I was good enough to write a book. We're learning all these things all the time, and if we can teach and talk and learn through them, then we're winning. So for all those listeners, thank you for stepping into that part of the story with me, and hopefully you walk with a spring in your step after hearing that, because there's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah, 100%.